Assalamu alaikum everyone. This is Quratul Ain, lecturer at the Department of Art and Design, University of Peshawar, and I did my MPhil from the Department of Archaeology, University of Peshawar in 2020 under the supervision of Dr. Muhammad Naeem Qazi, who is currently serving as Dean, Faculty of Art and Humanities, and also Professor at the Department of Archaeology, University of Peshawar. Title of my research for the MPhil was Analysis of Selections from the ShahNamah Manuscript, which is placed at the Pushto Academy, University of Peshawar, and to produce a new illustrated booklet. This is the image of the title page of the thesis report. This is the image of the table of the contents in my report. The chapter-wise division has been shown in the image. There are total 6 chapters. The first one being Introduction has subheadings such as background of the study, statement of the problem, aims and objectives, scope and significance. Chapter 2 is comprised of the review of the related literature, overview of the Shahnama, the poet and its making, summary of the epic, main epic, which is the poem itself, and then a brief history of the manuscript has been given, especially giving the background how manuscript illustration were initiated in the Muslim kingdoms. That shows how manuscript illustration started from the Abbasid schools or Mesopotamian school of art, leading to the Ilkhanid school, and then Timurid school and Safavid school. These are all Persian schools, the last 3 of them. And then lastly, how the miniature art or manuscript illustration were done in the Mughal era. Chapter 3 discusses the analysis of the Pushto Academy Shahnama manuscript. It discusses the structure analysis, the visual analysis that has its own subheadings, for example, layout of the folios, how the illustration has its layout, and the composition of the Pushto Academy manuscript illustrations, and the color scheme that has been used in the illustration, and also the connotations and iconography used in the illustrations by the artist of that era. Chapter 4 discusses the methodology that was followed in the making of the booklet. First of all, it discusses the design, research design, the execution of the project. It discusses how the inspiration was taken and how the ideation and aspirations procedures were followed. And it also discusses the selection of the characters and stories from within the Shahnama illustrations and the process of digital illustration, that how it was digitized into new illustrated booklet. A couple of examples have been given in the report. Chapter 5 discusses about the final artwork for the illustrated booklet. It shows the representation of Firdausi. Also, it represents the it tells about the representation of Sultan Mahmud and also the Rustam character and various characters of the Rustam of varying ages. Raksh saving Rustam while he sleeps, and Rustam and Zohrab on the white background. These are the different examples which has repeatedly been used in various Shahnamas, and that those have been included in this research as well. The thesis report ends with chapter 6, that is the conclusion, and it also discusses the future recommendations, and finally there's a bibliography. Shahnama, which is also called Book of the Kings, was written by Firdausi Tusi in 1010 CE, is one of the largest poems by the single author, comprising 60,000 couplets. It represents a mythological, legendary, historical and cultural manifestations of Persian identity in literary form. Shahnama manuscripts were for the first time illustrated in 1300 CE during Ilkhanid period. It has since then continued to be illustrated within and beyond Persian borders till the modern times, and this qualifies Shahnama as the most repeatedly illustrated text in Persian art. Among hundreds of the such illustrated manuscripts, one is placed at Pushto Academy's library in University of Peshawar. This is the example of folios from Pushto Academy Shahnama. Scholarly researches on Shahnama manuscripts have been in practice since the end of the 20th century. With its millennial celebration in the year 2010, various projects were launched related to Shahnama. The aim was to preserve the manuscripts in the form of digitization. Also to bring into proximity vast extent of manuscripts in numerous museums and libraries across the globe. Hundreds of manuscripts were made available through online databases where scholars can conduct their researches, such as Cambridge's Pembroke Shahnama Project database. Overview of the researches in Shahnama studies. Current researches are mostly based on generalized studies such as an overview of the epic, which was done by the Graber in 2010, study of the ShahNamah manuscripts produced at varying times and periods at Asoi in 1970 and Muhammadi 2006. The established scholars exploited their expertise on rare royal manuscript prototypes. The studies are done by Canby in 2010 and Bloom in 2004 and Blair in 2004. Studies focusing only on a specific issue or theme. The examples are Bren 2010, Mehran 1998, and multidisciplinary studies were conducted by Mahdavi in 2004 and Melville and Brand 2010. According to the analysis of Pembroke ShahNamah project, despite extensive researches on the diverse aspects of the epic from several perspectives, there are more issues to be resolved for the significant impact in the future, such as scenes from the episodes of ShahNamah cannot be given proper title names unless every individual manuscript has been fully discovered and studied. Text and image relationship have not been fully explored. Text alone needs study and specific attention, as some interpolated or truncated ShahNamah were also produced during later periods. Objective of my research was to analyze the artistic features such as composition, layout, and color scheme of Pushto Academy ShahNamah manuscript as the first-hand reference. To also find use of connotations associated with elements inside the illustrations as a creative tool of information retention, and to revive ShahNamah characters, stories for the young adults of this region through the production of new illustrated booklet using contemporary materials and mediums, for example, a digital medium. Scope and significance. This current research will introduce Peshawar Academy ShahNamah manuscript as a precious historical document which has never been explored. New themes would emerge for further multidisciplinary scholarly studies. It will help fill the gap by finding this manuscript's place and ascertaining its distinct identity among the milieu of thousands of illustrations developed across the cultures and locations. The problem of an ongoing sense of detachment in youngsters from our glorious past and rich culture will be addressed. Furthermore, we know that book reading has been curtailed to a greater extent due to the lack of local and contextual literature. Thus, the revival of the ShahNamah illustrations and its enduring characters executed in modern mediums will provide great moral lessons to the youngsters of this region. It will be a supplementary learning tool about history as well as adventure. Importance of archaeological artifacts and the new modes of preservation in a form of digital medium will be known to the youngsters of this region. The forgotten heroes of ShahNamah, for instance, Faridun, Rustam, Jamshed, Sohrab, etc., of the splendid past will be deemed equivalent to the most celebrated yet unrelated heroes of the Western world, such as Hercules, Odysseus, Batman, Harry Potter, to name a few. Importance of the archaeological artifacts and the new modes of preservation in the form of digital medium will be known to the youngsters of this region. This study will be helpful in curriculum development through the strategic partnership and cooperation between present researcher or artist, curriculum developers, and the publishers. An outcome of this research will be a great learning resource for the contemporary art students. It will encourage publishers and local artists to develop their own illustrated books rather than importing foreign content from the other regions. New market and business in illustrated books will be put into function, which will help generate revenue and employ. Illustrated manuscripts, or art of the book, is one of the old methods of visual communication in which a written text is accompanied with pictorial representation of text in decorative fashion. The material and method used to produce illustrated manuscripts in a book form changed with the availability of the raw materials and techniques over varying regions and periods. Since as early as ancient Egyptians till Common Era, bound books have played a pivotal role for the dissemination of ideas and record keeping. The word manuscript has been derived from two Latin words, manus, hand, and scriptus, from scribere, to write. The Oxford Dictionary defines the word manuscript as a book, document, or piece of music written by hand rather than typed or printed. The handwritten text could be inscribed on a flexible material with the help of ink, such as parchment or paper. The same dictionary defines word illustration as a picture illustrating a book or newspaper, etc. Illustrated manuscripts are also referred to as illuminated manuscripts because inside these the visual illustrations and decorative elements such as borders and letter initials were illuminated with the help of gold or silver. It was during the Middle Ages between 400 and 1400 in the West that manuscripts of such nature got prevalent. Classical works of Greeks and themes from the Holy Bible were written and illustrated on specially prepared parchment bound in a book form. The portable nature of the manuscripts thus helped in the spread of knowledge hundreds of years before the invention of a printed press. With the coming of Muslims on global political scene, various schools of manuscript production were established. Large quantities of Quranic verses were given manuscript shape, while books on other subject matters were also produced. The inception of Islamic civilization and huge patronage of the manuscript production signify the importance of education, written word, teaching, reading, and writing in the eyes of the Muslim rulers. Many historians today are of the view that Muslim rulers were bibliophile in nature due to the centrality of the Holy Quran in their lives. Beside Quranic manuscript, the illustrated books also had a central role in the Islamic civilization, initiated in the Abbasids period between 750 and 1258 CE, followed by the Persians during the Ilkhanid, Timurid, and Safavid periods, and also Ottomans and Mughals in the subcontinent. In the 8th century CE, during Abbasid period, book production became easier and cheaper due to the introduction of paper by the Chinese prisoners captured by the Abbasids, and also because of the Caliph Harun al-Rashid, who found Darul Hikmah, House of the Wisdom, in the newly built city Baghdad. Baghdad contained about 300 libraries along with the royal workshops to produce manuscript illustrations. It was a golden age of Muslim civilizations, which is accredited to the Caliph and later his son Ma'mun al-Rashid for welcoming promoting secular knowledge. The Abbasid school, also referred to as Baghdad or Mesopotamian school, is famous for its distinct style in which line is a prominent element. Colors are vivid with good contrast that fills up the flat areas within the contoured lines of the particular object. Flatness of the areas decorated with different patterns and textures that give aesthetic quality to the artworks. Compositions are simple and formal with the figures and other elements arranged into planes. Faces are painted with characters deriving from the indigenous miniatures, with a great deal of individualism and presence of expressions. Use of decorative borders around illustrations had not been developed at this stage. The sack of Baghdad by the Ilkhanid branch of the Mongols in the year 1258 CE ended the Abbasid Caliphate, and consequently all the artistic activities of the Baghdad school of manuscript production were interrupted for some times. During the Ilkhanid period, manuscript production continued to develop following the already established lines, but under their support, its quality as well as quantity was enhanced. Chinese influence became evident. This made possible exchange of new ideas and elements that were introduced into the illustrations too. It included Chinese ways of composing elements into pictorial space, Chinese icons and elements that included flowers such as lotuses, peonies, mythical animals like dragons and phoenixes, also the landforms like sponge-type rocks, Chinese killing, which is a cloud form. During the Timurid period, Timurid style developed with new strategies, improving on the previous compositions. New features were introduced to establish their own unique style. Landscape became more complex that would include landforms, trees, rock forms, and variety of vegetal forms, as well as rivers. To accommodate these intricacies, the horizon was then placed high, given less space to the sky, whereas more room for the different planes in which are arranged objects, figures, trees, and flowers, and architectural motifs, etc. This enabled artists to paint larger groups with the greater variety and spacing and without overcrowding. During the Safavid period, for manuscript production, a royal workshop was re-established in Tabriz under the supervision of Behzad and Basha Ismail. He was previously serving the Timurid patrons and now working for the new ones, who retained much of the previous styles and manners of the painting. Many other great painters such as Acadmy, Mir Sayyid Ali, or Dost Muhammad worked along too to produce great royal manuscripts. Later, Safavid rulers were not as powerful, and thus only less significant manuscripts were produced for them. On the other hand, their contemporary Mughals were the exceptional connoisseurs of art of the book. The great Mughals, who were the direct descendants of the Tamerlane and are considered as the offshoot of the Tamil dynasty, when Mughal invaded Indian subcontinent, they brought along with themselves the rich Central Asian culture, which would dominate the region for many centuries. Mughals naturally were great connoisseurs of art, and their interest lay in the art of the book for the reason that keeping the precious manuscripts in possession and producing new ones was a tendency among the emperors of those times. Manuscripts were the status of symbol and oftentimes exchanged as items of the gifts and trade. Analysis of the Pushto Academy ShahNamah manuscript. Structure analysis. Pushto Academy ShahNamah manuscript is an early 18th century literary work with total 212 folios, including 22 sumptuous color illustrations. On the colophon page, it mentions the name of the scribe, Maulana Fakhruddin Ahmad, and the date of its completion, that is 17 Muharram 1114 Hijri, which makes 1702 in the Gregorian calendar. Key painters of these professionally executed miniature style paintings is the scribe himself. It has been divided into 2 daftars, which is parts. 3 lavishly decorated unwans, titles, are done in traditional style. 1 at the preface and another at the start of the prologue, and 3rd at the start of the second daftar. Manuscript is bound in red leather with the traces of golden shamsa, which is central medallion, inscribed on its cover. It is in particularly good condition, yet 14 folios are missing from it. Provenance of the past manuscript is not mentioned anywhere in the library catalogue, neither does it say anywhere within the manuscript. Visual analysis. Illustrations in Pushto Academy ShahNamah manuscript are done in miniature style using conventional material and method, which was an established art form and style among the patrons of the literature in the subcontinent. The style of the illustrations and mastery of the techniques informs us that this painter in some ways have been trained under the masters of the Mughal workshops. To identify various trends in Pushto Academy ShahNamah illustrations and different strategies used by the artist in finding design solution, a step-by-step breakup of the important visual elements have been discussed. All folios of the Pushto Academy ShahNamah manuscript, with the exception of the first few, have been divided into 4 columns with the blank margins on each side. Majority of the illustrations of Pushto Academy ShahNamah manuscript have vertical format, while 4 have horizontal orientation. To understand the layouts of the Pushto Academy ShahNamah manuscript illustrations better, we will divide them into 2 main categories on the basis of its settings, that is, indoor settings and outdoor scenes. The indoor scenes are observed within the architectural setting, notably a princely palace. The picture plane is divided into various sections with the help of architectural structures. The focal point is usually Shah, the emperor, sitting on his throne or standing, and he is accompanied by the courtiers and main protagonist of the story. Horizon line within the illustration is placed really high so that there's enough room for the different activities taking place on the foreground area without overcrowding. In all of the illustrations of the Pushto Academy ShahNamah, all the figures are facing either side view or with semi-profile view, with only exception of one single example in which there's a horse which is only facing front. The artists of the Pushto Academy ShahNamah illustrations have arranged their figures in different types of compositions in terms of face arrangement, and these strategies include a zigzag composition, a spiral composition for the multiple figures, arch or bracketed shape figures standing in rows to help the viewer's eyes remain within the paintings and to focus the focal point, which is usually in the center. There's one illustration in which the triangular composition has been used, in which the figures are arranged in a way that it seems as if a pyramid has been placed in the center of the composition to achieve the strength and stability, and especially in a tense situation. There's also out of frame composition being used in the Pushto Academy ShahNamah illustration, which gives a sense of motion, energy, and rigor to the figures. To arrange the spaces within the illustration, there is a space division through colored landforms for multiple scenes within the single illustration, and the assorted colors give the effect of multiple scenes going on within single illustration. Different objects such as weapons or flags, trumpet, body gestures have been used as a relay for the ease of the eye travel. To identify the important figures within the illustrations, there is the use of hollow.
golden ring behind the heads of those characters. These have been used behind the head of Jamshed, Rustam, Jamshed, and Zahak. There are two illustrations with unusual figures in both of them, who is facing outwardly and backing at the scene going on, probably to avoid the tension and consequently helping the viewers to react in such an overwhelming situations. After analyzing the strategies used by the artist of the Pushto Academy ShahNamah illustration for the composition of famous paintings, the current artist, who is also a digital illustrator, have developed these illustrations in digital format, in which digital softwares were used for the production of the artworks. First of all, contextual review was done, in which contemporary artworks were observed. Then to create new artworks, different brushes were created that would match the artworks and the brushes used in the illustrations of the Pushto Academy ShahNamah. And warming up sketch of a Rustam character was developed from imagination after thoroughly going through the artworks. A color palette was created and developed using pick drop tool in the Photoshop. To develop a new character in the digital format for the ShahNamah booklet, a separate layer was created above the original image of a character, and the opacity of the original layer was reduced so that the layer above could be easily seen. The next layer was created for coloring the outlines, and then for that purpose the outline layer was duplicated, and then the character was colored according to the palette that was developed in Photoshop. The third layer was developed for the rendering of the textures, different textures, using various brushes that were developed in the Photoshop. This process was carefully undertaken, observing the original illustrations of the Pushto Academy ShahNamah illustration and the technique that were used by the artists, and the careful process of copying was undertaken. Here are the different examples of the characters developed according to the process. In this image of the White Dev, which is a character in the stories of the ShahNamah, you can see the different use of the brushes and the textures, and also the use of the colored layer just beneath the outline layer. Here's an example of different postures of the Rustam created for the different pages of the illustrated booklet. You can see how the same character was rendered in different poses and with the same costume and iconography. This is the final digital booklet based on the stories from the ShahNamah and inspired from the illustrations of the Pushto Academy manuscript. And this is available online on anyflip.com. Link to the booklet is available in the description below. You can flip through the pages and see how the story was retold by the current researcher, which is me, ByQuratul. I hope you like the project. You can give the feedback in the comment section and express your views about the project. Thank you.